Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Funky Marketing Podcast. Today, I have a pleasure to welcome a special guest and somebody that will help me talk about something other than strategy. Sure, we are talking about the strategy in the big picture, but today, Adam Kirch is going to help me talk about not just about copywriting, but about how can SaaS company upgrade their messaging, positioning, and how can use all that on their homepage, right? To basically stop with vague messaging, with general topics, and all those things, and have a clear conversion-driven narrative. He worked with a lot of startups. Some of them he mentioned, like Helios, Raftio, Neptune, and all those works led to impressive results. I think Adam will correct me if I'm wrong. 80% conversion lifts and 56% of more qualified leads. So, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
We were just talking about funny thing. You reached out to me and we had a chat like a long time ago, maybe a year ago, of you being on a podcast, and then a lot of things happen, and now it's finally happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. So it's funny how things work out like that. Sometimes you don't see immediate results, but like in the end, they can.
Exactly. So tell me, and the honest, a little bit about your background before we dive into the topic.
So I'm a messaging strategist, B2B conversion copywriter for B2B SaaS companies. I originally started out sort of wider B2B and become more narrow, focusing now actually specifically on homepages. So I help companies that generally have reached that stage of growth where they have product market fit already, but then now they find themselves in like a market where a bunch of companies are sort of saying very similar things, and they need to find a way to differentiate their message in a way that will help them stand out from the competition.
Right, and the homepage usually is the most crucial thing. I used to look at it in SaaS as an outlet when you already create the awareness, create the brand, right? Guide people to the homepage. When they come to the homepage, everything needs to be as clear as possible. So the only goal is for the right people to convert and click on, buy or talk to sales or those kind of things.
100%. Like when you think about it, I think Winter put out a study recently which showed I think 90%, 97% of B2B buyers will look at a website in the homepage, obviously as part of their evaluation process, but they'll only choose, I think there was 3 companies that they'll actually go to demo. So when you're in a market where you have at least half a dozen, probably double digits of similar enough companies that could be considered competition, your homepage needs to be exactly on point in order to get you to be in one of those in that shortlist of those 3 products.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. This is exactly the topic that's on my mind recently because I've been working. I didn't do that much, that kind of work a lot in the past few months, but now I do it. It's kind of interesting because it's not a startup, it's not a SaaS, it's a huge group that's dealing with the healthy energy and those kind of things. And I was like, damn, this is on the other hand, it's not a startup, it's not a SaaS, it's an enterprise level company, but then it's a group of 16 different companies in 16 different countries. And the way you come up with a copy for that is totally different than what 100%. I had to deal with before, right? And on the other hand, it's much harder to differentiate and to do something differently because they have each month, each quarter, the results. They have the most important things, slides, those kind of things. And I'm like, I need to do something different. And what I did, I was looking at SaaS companies, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to look like SaaS in a way and differentiate from the others. So, it's much clear on which segment you are focusing on compared to the competitors. But tell me, how is SaaS, when we look at the homepages and design and everything, different from the other companies? What I saw a lot in the past is that a lot of SaaS companies have homepages and websites that look all the same.
Yeah. So I think because of the level of sort of feature parity and and the degree of competition that there is in so many of these, in so many SaaS markets, it's like very important for a lot of these companies to establish the differentiation like very high up on the page, and yes, they can. They do tend to look the same, and there is an argument for that. Like there is an argument for like meeting expectations of customers, meaning like if the customer will expect something to look a certain way, then they can feel sort of like a bit disjointed when it doesn't. But in terms of the messaging, which is what I focus on, it's really, especially for companies which aren't sort of the industry leaders, which is most, right, which is like 99% of the market is not going to be like the household name. It's all about trying to establish their own, what makes them unique, as soon as possible. And like the best way to do that is really to is to be as close to your customers, as possible in terms of understanding how they, the value that they see, and that that they talk about when they speak about your product.
And talking about these things, so you want to say that they actually need to talk to the customers and get deeper and know them better than they know themselves, right?
Right. That's the key. I mean, I think, if I was to like sum up, what's the root cause of where B2B, B2B messaging, where does it go wrong, right? What's like, if you could summarize that one sentence, is that, it might not sound like, such a novel idea, but it's so true. It's too close to like the company and not close enough to the customer. And what I've been noticing actually recently, is a lot of companies will have social proof on their homepages. And it's really interesting. Like there's a company, just an example, like for your audience, there's a company that are in the digital signature space, right? So they compete with like, say DocuSign is the household name, right? So the message that they lead with on the homepage is that, you can sign documents faster with our product, right? And the problem is that's true for every product in that space. Like that's a universal value proposition, right? But if you look at the testimonials and all what the customers are saying on that website, they're all saying how they chose this product over DocuSign because this product has a specific advantage of being simple and like easy to use and not like a complicated UI and massive amount of features. People just want to have a document signing product and that's it. They don't need everything else that DocuSign offers. So there's a clear value proposition that customers are choosing this company over sort of the industry leader, and it's totally absent from their messaging. So I think it's a classic example of like, if you actually are in tune with like what your customers are saying, why are they choosing you? Like, why are they choosing you over the competition? What do they love about your product? And put that as your hero headline. And then you would have messaging that resonates much better with more of your sort of ideal prospects. Because when you lead with this sort of like universal, generic, faster, easier, you don't stand out amongst all the other products saying the same thing. So I think that's a classic example that I've seen recently of companies just not being in touch enough with the customers, what they're saying.
Yeah, I'm seeing that all the time. And it seems like, especially us marketers, like we try to avoid talking with the customers, like, as much as possible, or get away from the revenue as much as possible, which is totally opposite of what we should do, right? And in one moment it is something that's happening inside of the company, and sometimes the way we measure things, the way we set up the processes is actually doing that to the marketers, but sometimes it's just us not being courage, not having
Right.
enough courage to actually go and do that.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard, and like your homepage is like the hardest thing to get right. I think it's like it's the most important, like page on your website. Obviously, I think it's one of your most important marketing assets. But it's the hardest. It's the hardest to get right because you have to get refine that message that it matches exactly where the customer is and what they're and how expressing how you stand out. And I think companies, because of the reason, because it's so hard, they either say everything, right? They'll either just not know what to say and therefore just say everything. So they're all the features, all the benefits, everything, or they'll just miss out key things because they won't have that. They won't be informed enough. And yeah, speaking to customers is hard, right? It's not easy, and it's easy to sort of explain away. Oh, it's too difficult. Oh, our customers don't really like getting on calls. It's hard to book interviews, but like that's where the gold is. You have to do that. You have to
Yeah, so
have those conversations.
having that in mind, you mentioned something that I want to go back to, and it is, like, it's the hardest to do the copy for the homepage, but what about sales page? What about the landing page for Google Ads, for example? Those kind of things. So why is homepage more important than those ones, or is it more important?
So I think if like landing, I mean, in terms of like landing pages, I think those tend to be like more focused on a specific offer or a specific audience, whereas you might have on your homepage to target lots of audiences, or you have, you know, for product, like you mentioned, like you have products where they have, you know, a company with multiple products or multiple audiences, and then you have to find a message that will resonate with all of them. And I think that's why, because they are broader in their scope, and in terms of who they're targeting, they're harder to get right. Whereas you can be more specific with, you know, in terms of your targeting and the messaging, the copy can be more specific on a landing page, which is for like a specific offer or for a specific audience, right? So that's some more linear. I think that's one reason why it's hard to get, you know, why that's hard to get right. Also, yeah, I think that's what I'd say.
Yeah. I totally agree. So tell me, everybody listening now, the SaaS founder or somebody who's working in SaaS marketing, they listen to this now, they go to their homepage, they look at the head section of the website,
Yeah.
and they think, oh, I think this resonates. I think this is actually what we need. So how do they know if they nail down the message or not?
So how can they tell? So I mean, the way to tell is by validating it with the audience, right? Is it resonating with, you know, is it resonating with the customers that you're looking to target? So, you know, typically if you run a, you know, a winter test, for example, I found those to be quite useful to
Yeah,
get a gist
winter
of,
is great for those kind of things.
you know,
Yeah.
it's great. I wouldn't say it's not a perfect, you know, there's no perfect, it's not a perfect solution. There are drawbacks, but in terms of getting a feel as to whether your message resonates, um, well enough, you know, with the people, you know, the type of people you're talking about, that's a great way to sort of check whether you've missed the mark, or, you know, and a lot of times the marketers themselves, when they put together messaging, they're so close to the product that they'll miss out like they'll miss out key points, or that need to, you know, questions that the audience has that they don't answer, or connections that are obvious in their mind but aren't obvious to the audience. And so it's a great way to find out like where the holes are and plug them. So I would say that's what they, you know, if they want to, if they want to know if their message is resonating. I mean, first of all, you know, is it performing well? Like, you know, like one way to tell is your metrics, right? And the other way is to test it, like with Winter, with usertesting.com, like other companies which have these sort of like validation testing. You know, but the ultimate way is, you know, does it convert? You know, I had a company, I think, you know, I think this is like a great story, and that this is like now my go-to example for like like the mistakes like to make. So, a company reached out to me a couple of months ago. They'd redid their messaging, and their homepage conversions like dropped by like 90% or something. Like literally like fell off a cliff, like unbelievable.
Yeah.
And and I said to them, well, did you speak to your customers before you decided on the new messaging angle? And unsurprisingly, the answer was no, right? The leadership team had decided that this was the message we were going to run with to differentiate our product from the market. It was all about like how their product links to increasing revenue, like predictably of the customers, and the customers, and so the revenue just fell off a cliff. So I asked them, like, do you have any hypothesis about why maybe, you know, maybe why it didn't work? And they said, well, yeah, we just don't think the customers care about that. Like they were coming to this product with a specific problem that needed fixing, like they in the customer feedback analytics space, right? So they have like this masses of data that they need to organize, and it's very difficult manually to do that, and they're looking to fix that problem. So the fact that they were being told that this product would increase the company's revenue is not of primary concern to the people that are actually the ones that are first coming to the website and going to be your champions for getting that deal done. So this is a classic example of like how not to go about redoing your messaging. You know, you have to speak to your customers, find out like why they're choosing you, and take it from there rather than coming it from the other, you know, coming it from your perspective.
You mentioned the example that I see a lot. So like everybody says that, you know, they're increasing your revenue,
Right.
right? It seems to be a buzzword in the last, I think, even 2 years. You
Right.
know, we now have the revenue teams. Everybody is increasing revenue, and when everybody's saying about it, it's the most obvious thing that you can say, right?
Right.
Because like of course, I expect that tool that we are buying to increase the revenue, right? That's why we are buying it. But maybe it doesn't have to be the tool directly that increases the revenue. It does something to the team, to the company, to the processes, to whatever it
Exactly.
is, to the product, which increases revenue
Exactly.
indirectly.
Right, and it's so interesting because like your customers, also the other thing to realize is that your customers aren't, your customers are smart people. If you don't make that connection clearer, so for example, this company that I mentioned, so they run winter testing on on this new messaging, and that so many of their sort of ideal their target audience was saying, I don't understand this connection. Like you're saying that this I'll get to from A to B with this product, but I don't understand the connection. So it's another example, that it might be clear in like the product marketer's mind how their product will increase the revenue, but to the customer it's like a mystery. So first of all, like it's irrelevant, they might not care about it, and second of all, if you don't make the connection clear, it's just confusing. So that's another reason why these sort of third or fourth degree benefits aren't generally like the best things to run with as your main message.
Yeah, and confusing is the one thing that you want to avoid at all cost.
100%, yeah.
So usually when I'm looking at the homepage,
Yeah.
and working with companies, a lot of them don't know, what needs to be there on the homepage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually they maybe come up with half the page, but then the bottom half of it will be totally messy. They will put something which is unimportant. They will add different stuff instead of adding the stuff that will actually increase the trust and tell the message the right way. Or they use the description in the head section as a headline, right? That switch can often be something that I notice. But so tell me a little bit about how do you structure the page.
So how do I structure the page? So really, like I work with this sort of general idea of a messaging hierarchy, but what I find is that you have to present information in the order that your customers need to hear it, right? That's another reason why you need to know your customers intimately in order to understand when they come when that person's sitting there and they like click to your homepage, what are they thinking about? What questions do they have? So for a lot of companies, it will be, why is this company different from the more famous one, like the industry leader? So like that would be what you need to lead with. But for another company that I worked with once, there was a key concern, like one of the main differentiators about this company, or one of the key concerns of the customers, was the customer service of the companies, which was typically awful in their sort of in the competitors. So we put those testimonials speaking about the customer service, we put them first, because that we knew that was a key question that that they would have. So normally I wouldn't necessarily lead with a testimonial under the hero section, but in that instance, it was a landing page. We did, because we knew that it was something that was very much on the mind of the audience looking at the at the page. So the answer is, you need to understand how your customers need to consume the information, in what order they need to hear the messages that you want to say. But generally speaking, a big problem I see on a lot of homepages that they don't. I mean, let's start from the top, right? So the first mistake is not defining like what category you're in, and just expecting people to understand that, right? So that leads to a lot of problems, because it leads to a lot of confusion. Like, is this what I'm looking for? Like when you have like a few words above the headline, just stating, okay, this exists in like this space, right? This is like a customer feedback analytics tool, or it's a communication, it's something like Slack. It's saying what category you play in. Just stating that will immediately solve lots of problems in terms of like people being confused. It's about presenting your differentiated value. That's especially true, like we said, for companies that are competitors or trying to break into the market. It's about empathizing with your audience. Like, there's another issue that I see on lots of SaaS, B2B SaaS companies. They typically don't address the problem. They just jump straight into the solution. Again, that's what they want to talk about, right? Like, that's like the product marketer wants to talk about the solution again. So but if you can show your audience that you understand them, you know them, you empathize with them, you know the problems they deal with, then that's going to convince them that you are a solution that will actually help them achieve what they're looking to do. So having a problem section, I think, is a big win. Like Collabs actually came out with a new homepage recently, Collab software. So
And
they
it's great. I love
a
what
great job,
MJ
right?
is doing over there. Yeah.
Yeah, so like I love, yeah, that is, I think that's another one of my go-to examples of like how to get your homepage right. It's like very well done. And the other thing I just mentioned is that the copy, like let's say in this, like in Colab, their example, so the hero copy is, I think, like this, the subhead under the headline is like 6 lines long, which is going to make a lot of SaaS marketers nervous because like it has to be short, it has to be short. But you know, but they actually do a fantastic job of identifying the problem they solve, the audience that they solve it for, and why that's valuable. So those are the 3 questions that you really need to answer, you know, straight away on the page. And then they do an amazing job of being very specific about what problem they're solving and the cost of not solving the problem. You know, this is what will happen if you don't, you know, adopt our solution. And that's a great way of demonstrating that you understand the market. And then it's about, again, so being relevant, showing that you understand the problem and that you understand that you solve for the use cases of that audience. And then so showing, and then as you go down the page, typically then you want to show what makes you different. You don't want to show all the features. You don't want to show like the features that are ubiquitous.
That everybody has, for
Everybody
example.
has, and like that's the thing. Like people, like the market knows this. Like especially in more mature markets. I was speaking to another one of my clients the other day, and they said to me they had a conversation with one of their customers, and they said to them, "Listen, like we know that every product they're in like the machine learning experiment tracking space, right? So the customer said to them, like, we know that every product that does experiment tracking has these features. Like that's just a given. Like you're not going to tell us anything by, you know, saying we have this feature and this feature. We know you have these features. Like that's a given. Why are you different, right? So again, like it's about highlighting the points of differentiation that are going to pique the interest of your target audience in order that they will explore your website further. It doesn't have to say, you know, I think like a great analogy for, you know, your homepage is like it's like the front window of your shop. You know, like make that appealing and intriguing and exciting enough that people will actually step inside. They'll look at, you know, they'll check out your product page, your solution page, but it has to do enough to capture their attention and keep them interested and make them excited enough to explore more. And then yeah, why are you different? And the value that you're going to give. So proof is very important. Proof is, you know, is very important, and I think that's another big area where I see room for improvement. Let's say on B2B SaaS websites is that they will make claims without, you know, backing them up. So they'll make claims like 10x your pipeline, 10x your revenue, 3x your pipeline, the fastest, the easiest, etc. And there won't be any hard evidence backing that up. And I see that also, like we're going back to winter tests time and time again, like when companies run these tests, a message, you know, what I see in feedback of you know, these target audiences again and again is, this sounds too good to be true. You say it's easy, but is it really? You know, I don't believe you. And unless you have, you know, so unless you can actually consolidate what you're saying with, you know, you say you're 10x your revenue. We did that for 5 companies, and these are their names, right? And these are the stats. It just doesn't. It doesn't. Your message won't hit home because buyers are too skeptical these days, you know. And I think,
Yeah, it kind of, you know, and I want to use this to kind of go into your process and how you're coming
right,
up with this. Like I usually do more or less the same as MJ did for the call up. I come up with strategic narrative. I ask questions, then I come up with strategic narrative working with the CEO or you know, a couple of more people in there, and it's usually like Andy Ruskin style framework, right? Like 5 steps, which is like the big change. Then we have the old versus new, or how do we actually back up those things? The change is actually real and it's happening. Third part is you know, promised land. How do we get to the promised land, and how does utopia look like? Fourth one is where we actually introduce our differentiator, right? Our features and how do we differentiate. And the fifth is, did we actually get somebody to the promised land, right? And it's usually via us page on a website, but you can use segments to kind of craft the ideal homepage for the website.
right. So So
How the question was, are you doing something the same, or you're having your own process which is a little bit different from that?
I mean, yes, so similar. Like, really, my process is really heavily focused on, like I mentioned, the customer research, like getting as close to the customer as possible to understand their journey, right? Understand like their buyer journey. What other options they consider, why they choose this product over other products, what are they looking for, what's their jobs to be done, what are their desired outcomes, and what are their hesitations and outcomes and objections that block, right? That block them from making that buying decision. And then speaking to their best, the company's best customers, what does success look like? What features are they raving about? Because it could be like happens very commonly in B2B and SaaS that the company will feel like specific features are they have a favoritism for, they want to speak about, but it could be that actually the way that it's being used is different, or actually their best customers talk about the product or prioritize different use different features than they think are the most important. So through the customer research, it's understanding, if we talk about like the process for compiling the messaging on a homepage, it's understanding like what are the most important things to the customers in these different buckets, and then like organizing that onto the page.
Yeah. Do you usually have a permission from the client to talk to the customers, or you do it differently? Because I'm asking because in most cases, like they don't let somebody who comes just to help them with copy to talk to the customers, for example.
Yeah, so like I mean, usually that's part of my agreement with them. Like if a company would turn around to me and say like, we're not going to let you speak to our customers, so I would be like, have a nice day. Like, like I'm not going to take on such a project. Obviously, there's more to research than, I mean, interviewing the customers is like a big part. It's probably my favorite part of the process. But there's also like social listening, message mining, VOC research by seeing what people are saying, on customer reviews, on Reddit, on in different channels online about the product. That also goes into understanding like how the product is being talked about by its customers. But yeah, like that's really like a non-negotiable part of my process. If the company will say no, then I'm not going to be able to get the results that they're looking for. Simply put.
Love that. So tell me, what are one or two things that you would suggest to somebody looking at to improve their homepage now at the moment when they're looking at it? What are one or two things they can add or
Okay.
exclude to kind of make it
Right.
more effective?
So two things jump to mind. So I mean, a third thing would be like looking at their customer reviews that they currently have and seeing, does that language match the language on the homepage? And almost in all circumstances, almost in all instances, the answer is no. And if they would just use the specificity that the customers use, or use the words, the language that the customers use to describe their problems and like what they love about the product, they would get better results. Other than that, I think a big opportunity that I see companies don't take is with the headlines that go down the page, like sort of the section headings, like we call them crossheads. So they are a big opportunity to tell your narrative, right? Typically, your typical website visitor is not going to read every single word on your page. They might just scan, go down the page. So what they're going to see is the bolded print. They're going to see those headlines. So if you have, above your testimonials, what our customers say, or our features, or just placeholder headings that don't actually communicate any value, you're missing a massive opportunity because you're not actually saying anything with those. So a big win, I think, for that in terms of communicating the message effectively that companies would have, is using those as opportunities to actually say something valuable. So instead of saying what customers say something your customers actually said about your product. Instead of just saying our features, what's your value proposition? So like that would be like something you could do quite simply. And the other thing I see still lots of companies do is ask questions on the website that, especially at the end, the bottom of the homepage. So someone's reached the bottom of the homepage and they are interested, right? Because they've managed to scroll all the way down, so they're warmer than someone that just like read the interior section, and they're at the point where you could convert them, or they could click to go to another page on the website, and you ask a question that the answer could easily be no, right? I'm still seeing lots of websites where it's, are you ready to supercharge your this, or are you ready to that? And like, well, if the answer is no, and it could be because like the phone just rang or
Is the
anything,
end, right?
right? Then that's you're just over. So like again, it's like missing those opportunities to communicate value by copying, I think, essentially what they think, doing what they think they should do because, well, this is what everyone else does, and it's just a blind following the blind. So those would be two ways to, I think, immediately improve the copy. And yeah, that's what. And the other thing would be to speak more to the customer by using the word "you" more than the product. If you could rewrite every sentence on your page, beginning with "you" or "your," or some derivative of that, rather than the product name, you would immediately make the customer feel like they see themselves much more in your messaging. So it's not like this isn't my this I didn't come up with this. This is like Joanna Weeb's one of Joanna Weeb's teachings. She's like the head of copy hackers, so she, it's the U rule she calls it, but it's very effective in helping the person reading your messaging feel like you're talking to them. And it doesn't feel like people will often push back and say, well, it will sound very repetitive if you just say that the whole time, but people like speaking about themselves, and people like
Yeah.
being spoken to. So I think that would be a great opportunity for
Yeah,
improvement.
for some reason, when we talk to our friends, to people on social, we talk using using emojis, using shortcuts,
Right,
using specific languages, those kind of things, especially now the younger generations that are coming.
right,
But when we sit down on a laptop or desktop to kind of come up with a copy for the website or
yeah,
whatever it is, if it can be an email, right?
right,
We suddenly turned to a person that's like kind of, oh, I will take care of the grammar and I need to do everything as it should. The only thing that matters is how the customers will
right. Sure,
see what you are writing, right?
sure. Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, and it's also like I've also find it's very interesting. Like with marketers, like happens a lot. When they'll be like you said, like in conversation, they'll speak normally, they'll use normal language, and then they'll start writing on their homepage, and then suddenly they become like a robot, right? And like
Yeah, yeah,
so
exactly.
part of my process, like I'll send out a questionnaire to to the client before the project, so I can get before the discovery call, so I can get an idea of of the product, of their customers in the market, etc. And I'll ask them, what problems are your customers struggling with? What are they looking to achieve? How does your product different? Is it different from the market? And the answers I'll get in the Google form sound normal, right? And then I'm like comparing that to what they say on the landing page, what they say on the homepage, and it's like a different language. And I think that's also something that it's like a muscle that you need to train. Like when you're at
Exactly. You don't want to sound like a dictionary.
right,
So tell me, talking about all these things, and now we are living in the age of AI, right?
right,
If you don't give AI the good prompts, it will give
yeah,
you that dictionary voice or whatever
right,
it is.
right,
It can be even get worse because now a lot of people already know some words that AI is using,
right.
right?
No,
So
you
that,
can really smell it. Yeah, you can smell it
yeah,
from a mile away.
exactly. Or,
Right,
or you even know the structure, right? The structure is okay, but if you don't remove like the emojis and those kind of things, it's getting scary.
right.
So talking about that, a lot of people are now using like website builders with templates, with those kind of things. So what's your opinion on that?
So I think it's like it's risky, it's dangerous, and I wouldn't. Like, I'll tell you why. Because for like as opposed, as a messaging strategist, copywriter, there are definitely valuable things that you can use AI for brainstorming research. But when you actually use it to write your copy, so this is the thing that I've found, and is the current state of play, in my opinion, is that the copy that AI is producing, and the messaging the AI spits out. First of all, like you said, you need to know what you're doing in order to get good results. Like it's really garbage in, garbage out. So that's why it's not a solution, I don't think, for the majority of companies who don't have like a messaging specialist in their team. Because if you aren't a skilled copywriter and you aren't a messaging specialist, then you're not going to be able to give the AI the prompts that you need to get the good results. And just to accept whatever AI throws at you is you're playing with fire. The other thing is, I think that just the quality of the copy, like it's now at the point where it's like good enough to pass, as clear. Let's say, like, in terms of the clarity, it's good enough. But the problem is it's not good enough to be good enough, right? It has to be standout in order to actually make an impact. Because if everyone is using the same thing, then like you won't be able to you won't your copy won't stand out from in the market as unique, or your message won't stand out as unique, because you're using the same tools as everyone else. And that's really what I found. Like when I see copy that's been written with with the AI, something about it's lacking. Like it's not different enough. It's not unique enough. It just sounds unexciting. And so while it might pass as, you know, a B plus, but you know, it's not going to be an A star. You know.
Exactly. I mean, we are not talking about the copy for the company's social pages because
Exactly.
AI would do enough there.
Right,
You know,
but that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. I'm uninspired. I think that the copy that AI is currently producing is to a large extent, like, you know, not very memorable. It's quite forgettable in terms of, and that is a, you know, when you're in that crowded market space, when you have, you know, many competitors all competing for the same, you know, the same audience, you want to be the one that people walk away thinking, you know, with that memorable message in their mind. And I think with AI, it's not there.
yeah, I totally agree because like, you know, it's okay for the social. You will do another post today or tomorrow. Okay, whatever it is, you will do a lot of posts, so you will see how it works and improve it. But homepage, basically, you know, it's your yard, it's your house, right? And you
Right,
don't want to do it just for the sake of doing, right? Because
right.
when you already, you know, create the awareness, you do the advertising, whatever it is, and you also somebody's coming to your homepage, you want it to be clear enough and, you know, communicate the differentiate value and how are you
Mhm.
helping similar companies like theirs to actually convert.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. 100%. It's not.
So here's, oh, okay, sorry,
Yeah.
go on.
No, 100%. I mean, you won't obviously you won't you're not writing a different homepage every day. But that's another thing I admire about certain companies is that they you know they do iterate a lot. Like I think companies which are really in tune with their messaging and are talking to their customers on a regular basis, you'll see that they will have different, you know, variations of their homepage every couple of months, and I think that also helps test what's working best.
Yeah, that's also important to say. So when you come up with the copy for your homepage and you set it up, it's not like set in stone, right? You need to constantly talk to the customers and see
Right.
if things change. If your product changes in a way and adapts to the
Mm,
customers, then you change also the copy for the homepage.
right.
But correct me if I'm wrong, but the thing is, you first need to know how you're positioning, how you're setting up the messaging, set up the foundation, then you come up with a copy for the website.
No, 100%. No, that's true. I mean, and that's another issue that's another issue that companies can miss and go down the wrong path with. That usually, I mean, usually in most cases, like when the copy is not working, it's because the messaging is not working. When the messaging is not working, it's because the positioning is wrong. So, like, really, the copy has to be built on top of solid position messaging, which has to be built on top of on point and like refined positioning. And like that's why, as when I work with my clients, I include that in my service, because when a company comes to me saying, "Oh yeah, we need new copy," well, really, they might need to have a whole new messaging strategy, and that might also require looking at examining, is their positioning on point. So really, like, one, you can't, unless you have the foundation like solid, then you're not going to be able to build on top of that in a way that's going to be effective, because you'll be building on top of like flimsy foundations essentially. So yeah, 100% totally agree. Usually the positioning is the core of everything, and then develops into a messaging strategy, which develops into the actual copy, how you say what you want to say on your homepage.
Exactly. So here's an example and something that I've been thinking a lot recently. I've been working with a startup that actually works in a recruiting space, and they basically were consultants to the companies hiring people. But then they say, okay, we can add AI to that to kind of help us, but still the most important thing remains the psychometric testing that they are doing, right? They used to do it manually. Now they have AI to help them with that, and they can scale like 100 candidates and the
Mm,
data for them to the companies. And they are not going after the tech companies. They are going after telco, retail, you know, automotive industry, those kind of industries. And now the question is, should they add in their head section in the headline or the description, should they add AI or no? Because basically it will determine the category or subcategory they are going in.
right. So no, I would say just saying AI in your in the hero section is not a winning solution unless you can actually communicate how AI makes your product more valuable. Then it's just noise and it's confusing. And I see that a lot. I actually posted about that on LinkedIn recently, like a graphic with a whole bunch of websites, all leading with this like AI message, and no one knows what it means. And the problem is that no one. It's very difficult for your people that you're trying to talk to understand what you mean when you say, um, AI empowered customer service. So what it might sound impressive, but like, what does that actually mean? Like, how is that actually going to help me? It's not the AI is not inherently like a valuable thing, unless you can actually like explain how it's improving your product in a tangible way. It's a feature, right? It's not a value proposition. So I think that that's a trend at the moment. We're seeing a lot of these tech companies are just jumping on this AI bandwagon and like shouting about it in their we have AI, but it doesn't mean anything. It's not valuable unless you make it so. So that's that would be my advice. You could say, you could explain how AI helps, improve the quality of your product. But saying words like AI powered, for example, like what does that mean? Like, AI enabled, AI powered. You have to actually get more specific with how that will help your customers achieve their goals. Otherwise, it's not clear.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, in this case, is actually helping them do the tests, faster and on a bigger scale. But it's not important. Customers don't care if
Right,
AI is helping them or no, right?
right.
In that way.
So again, I think it's another classic example I find of like at the core, the problem is that's the message that has been developed from the company's perspective and not enough in touch with where the customer is. There's another manifestation of the same phenomenon.
Yeah, and I want to use the same example to kind of tackle one more topic. And it
Yeah,
is, so they started as consultants,
yeah,
right? So it's now consultants with AI, right? And basically they have a product now. So the dilemma remains: do they talk about themselves as consultants still? Now you have an AI consultant, or they say we have this tool that is made from us being consultants using our knowledge and experience to put into it, and now you're basically buying a product, not consultants that use AI to kind of help you with it. Now that remains, it's not a question to ask, to answer by you or me. It's a question to be asked by the customers, right?
right. Yeah, sure. But that's a hard dilemma when you have like when you have a product that also has like a service element in it as well. Um, that's actually that's a quite hard thing to communicate because you're trying to combine those two things. You might, I guess, if when they're making that switch. I mean, if the goal is, again, wouldn't get into the strategy of that company, but I think at SaaStr, I think I was watching one of the conferences, and they were the talks over then. I think someone had exactly this question. They were asking,
Hmm.
why, how do they message, how do they communicate that as a similar product that had those two elements. And I think the answer that was given was to at the beginning start off, yes, talking about those both elements, but as as they move towards being more product centric as opposed to the service side, then develop the messaging accordingly to see, putting more of the weight on like the product rather than the consultants.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And in the last episode, I have Shiv Narayanan, who said one thing, because like here in the Balkans, the thing remains that companies were mostly outsourcing development, and they were all service based because of, let's say, one of many reasons, but the biggest one is there was no experience in the country, and somebody needed to make the mistakes to have success, and then come back and share the knowledge to help them out. So now it's happening, and a lot of companies are moving from service-based companies to the product-based companies. um, but the thing is, you know now there's a sensitive transition. How do your customers know you? right?
Mm.
Is it, you need to first make sure that that part is working well, and then start building another one.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I definitely hear that. But I also think like that could be an opportunity, like for these companies that are moving into more of the product space, but they have that
Mhm.
expertise. That could be a great way also to different, that could be a way that they will be able to differentiate their product from like the market. I work with a company that were like a sort of, they were a shipping logistics SaaS. They were like a SaaS for shipping logistics, and so basically they were a company that had been around. This is like more sort of traditional B2B. They've been around for like 30 years, very successful company, lots of customers, and they had now developed this like SaaS product that would work in conjunction with their B2B service part of their business. But they really know their stuff, right? And they were competing with a company that was a startup built by people who have no idea about shipping. They just created this product. And from what I understood, like this other product they were competing with, the customer service was terrible. There were lots of complaints, lots of one-star reviews, because this company was run by people who didn't know the industry. So they were making all these mistakes. And even though their product looked fancy and it had a nice flashy UI, but behind the scenes, it didn't work. There were problems. So coming into the market from that perspective could be a great way to communicate how you're differentiated from the rest of similar products, because you're based on that expert knowledge, and therefore your product is better because you know the industry.
Yeah, you reminded me now of an answer that I gave to a student on an event recently. They asked me, how do you get into the entrepreneurship? I know your thing and doing that. And I told them, it's not start a company right away. You don't know what you're going to do. You are all around the place. You are learning a lot of stuff. Pick a industry, pick a niche, go ahead, work for a bigger company, see what's happening inside it, find out how decisions are being made, see what are the gaps. And when you do all that, when you feel that you can solve a specific problem, specific gap, then you go and build a company, build a product, build a service, whatever it is that solves that. And it's exactly where your expertise will be your advantage in that case.
100%, right? I mean, you see that. I mean, that's like that's the sort of almost the norm in SaaS, right? You see that the founders themselves, like this collabs is a great example of that. Like the founder worked as a product designer and ran into all these problems in that product design process, and collabs is the product of his wanting to solve the problems that he himself faced. So that, yeah, 100%. I know
Love
those,
it.
and those the
Also, that goes out for winter. We mentioned them a lot, Pep, and
yeah,
others. Pep was a guest on this podcast as well. Basically, he was running a CRO agency back in the days. In this Balkan space, we all knew him as a CRO guy, right?
right.
And a lot of people working in SEO in agencies knew him and wanted to do the same thing as Pep did, right? So he used that and came up with a product that actually solves a lot of those issues.
Right. So I know how those tend to be like the most successful founders are the ones that come from a place where they were actually facing the problem themselves, and then like the product is how they solve that. And interestingly, like also so you see sometimes when those founders step away from the company, then things can start to to go stale if they the impact of of that founder is no longer actually in the company itself.
Yeah, totally agree. Anything that I forgot to ask you?
I think we covered everything. Yeah, great. I think we covered everything.
Yeah, I
Awesome.
think it was a nice combo going back and forth. And actually, it felt like 5 years ago when I was in the agencies and working in trenches and those kind of things, like talking about copy. Um, and I think we uncover how that's not like our, we've been through it, did it a lot, and now we are doing it easy. It's not that. You need to have a process behind it, and to know how you come up with information from the customers, how do you come
Hmm.
up with information about the product, about the company, about all those things, and how do you gather all that together on a homepage to communicate what actually needs to be communicated for your customers to convert.
Yep, 100%. If the process isn't in place, then the result will just be a mess.
Yeah, I'm telling that because usually say, you read a lot of comics, you read a lot of books, you write, you read a lot of articles, right? You write a lot. That's how it's happening. It's not the research part needs to be there, and the process needs to be in place.
That's what I believe. Yeah.
Guys, now it's the moment when I tell you to go back to the beginning of the episode, listen to everything, stop when you see an important topic. If you need a further explanation, you can reach out to Adam. You can reach out to me and ask questions. I'm sure Adam will be happy to answer them. And Adam, tell the people where they can find more info about you.
So I'm on LinkedIn primarily, and my website also adamkirch.co. You can read about, you can find more about me there, and contact me there, or on LinkedIn. Reach out. If you have any questions, like you said, I'll be happy to answer. I post about messaging and copywriting every week, and that's where I hang out. So
Yeah,
looking forward.
guys, go ahead and send connection request to Adam. Follow him. If you do it, say that you heard him on a Funky Marketing podcast. Let's see if that actually works. Let's try it out. But anyway, if you've been listening to this podcast, make sure that you follow. If you like it or you dislike it, give us a review. Tell me, what do you like, what do you dislike. And Adam, thanks again for being my guest today and talk about messaging, positioning, copywriting, and how we set up the homepages for SaaS companies. And for the end, what I always say: keep it funky, guys, and see you in the next episode.